Boom. Hello. How are you? It's been a while, guys. It's good to see you again, and I hope you're doing well. Because yeah, it's been a while since I made one of these talking head, floating shoulder videos, and it's kind of funny because I've just tried to make this video about, well, twice now. This is my third attempt, and it kind of is sitting quite nicely in a way, in an inspirational way, about what I want to talk about, because I had already had in mind what I wanted to talk about to you guys today, in relationship to being an INFJ, and to do a bit of this, a bit of that, in relation to the old INFJ thing again. I feel like it's been a while. And what I was going to talk about was this whole concept of self-analysis, which is something that I know personally that is going on all of the time, and I'm pretty sure that is also something that goes on for you a lot of the time too. And I'm saying it's kind of funny that I've already tried to do a few takes of this video, because I've just been able to literally witness this self-analysis in action, in the fact that I'd make a video and I started as a no, this doesn't sound right, this is going wrong, what am I talking about, how am I, and basically this self-analysis was in action. So when I've started to learn that whenever I feel like I'm struggling to convey something, especially when I'm in front of a camera, the best bet is just to shoot straight for the thing that is causing the struggle, the so-called elephant in the room. So that is what I'm going to talk to you guys about now, and it is self-analysis and how it can be so kind of restrictive, and how it can feel so confining, and how it can almost feel like this constant battle that we have to fight against our mind, which is so hyper aware of its own self. So here we go, let's go for it, let's see what comes out, because I'm kind of just ad-libbing now. So for me, a lot of the time, and this happens, yes, like now when I make a video, it happens when I'm talking to people, it just happens pretty much all the time. It happens when I'm lying in bed, happens when I'm trying to exercise, happens when I'm trying to do anything in life. There is a part of my mind, or my consciousness, or my soul, or whatever you want to call it, I don't know, that is kind of standing outside of my own self, and from a third person perspective is observing everything that is going on in my own mind, and also in relationship to how that is relating to the external world, how I'm coming across, how I may be being seen by other people, and what that means, and what the risks are, what the positives are, how is that fitting in with society, how is that fitting in with being a human being, how is that fitting in with my values, or what I would like to be, or where I'd like to go, everything. How does it fit in with reality? What is reality? Who am I? Blah, blah. It is this constant self-analysis on all the time. Now, in interpersonal ways, it kind of works by feeling like I am having to almost not live up, but I'm having to be aware of how I'm coming across to somebody or a person. And in a positive sense, this means that usually I can find myself in any kind of situation, maybe with people who I don't usually spend much time interacting with, maybe people who have quite a different view on things or a different type of personality, but I can still usually find a point of reference and a way to talk to these people in a way that they relate to, or they feel comfortable around, or they even accept. Now, this used to really piss me off a lot when I was younger, because it always made me feel that I was being inauthentic around people. And I guess is actually what triggered this whole journey of self-discovery that eventually led me to learning about being an INFJ, and the whole journey of knowing thyself. Because I knew that when I was in a kind of a social situation, even if I was around people that maybe I felt were overstepping my boundaries, or I wasn't particularly, or I didn't feel actually I had much of a connection with, I didn't really relate to them, I would still somehow, in a kind of, almost it felt like an autopilot, be able to act and behave in a way that almost made me like these people, as if I kind of could understand the subtleties of their expression or the unsubtleties of their expression, know how to talk, know how to express myself, know what kind of tone of voice to use, know that there were certain subjects that maybe I shouldn't talk about, and basically in a way that would prevent any, and this is the important part, especially for INFJs, it would prevent any disharmony. It would, even if I felt personal disharmony in myself, within the group that I found myself in, it maintained harmony, because the accepted way of behaviour was being maintained. I was not disrupting it by coming across as someone who, you know, was like, oh, I don't agree with you, I'm going to have an argument with you, you're wrong because of this, and I'm right because of this, and whatever. That's generally how I would always behave. Now, as you get older and you start to understand that there is a definite need for personal boundaries, and also you understand the importance of finding people that you actually relate to and surrounding yourself by those kinds of people, you start to realize that it's not healthy for yourself and for other people to constantly adjust yourself to try and fit in, or not to cause any kind of conflict. Sometimes conflict is needed. It is you can't escape it, and it is a personal kind of it's a personal balance point where you can kind of decide when to walk away or when to confront something, and that only comes with experience, from learning more about yourself and what you really stand up for and what you value and what you're prepared to put up with and what you're not prepared to put up with. But anyway, this whole self-analysis thing will never go, and it will never go. So in one sense, like I've just explained, it can have this negative effect of making you feel like you are at odds with yourself. Again, it has a positive effect that you can relate to such a vast majority of people, and you can have an experience of different facets of human expression or beliefs that normally you might not be exposed to. And it's particularly helpful if you find yourself in a foreign country or in a completely different culture. And even if you might disagree with the beliefs of that culture or whatever, you understand that just kind of going in there and trying to speak from a place of standing on a pedestal and saying you're wrong or this is so backwards isn't really going to be helpful. And you haven't lived in that culture from birth, and so you are speaking from kind of a place of non-experience, in a way. So what I've found is when you can pick up upon what is accepted or what you can talk about, and you respect that, then you can begin to make relationships with people in a way where they will start to trust your opinion more if you decide to start talking about things that may not necessarily be so readily accepted in that culture, or be a bit on the edge, if you will. And it usually comes across a lot better. But in a non-serious way, it's very fun because you can learn quite quickly maybe a certain phrase or a certain action or a certain way of behaviour that usually only people within that culture know, and then you show this to people and they find it hilarious that you know this. And I'm talking now because I had an remembering about when I was in Africa for a while, and I spent some time actually learning some kind of African style, and I'm not going to do them now, so don't ask me, some African style dance moves, yeah? And I was in an environment and I basically showed this off out of the blue, and they all fell about laughing in hysterics, probably because I was doing it so badly, but at the same time they appreciated it, that this white Western kid knew these kind of dance moves, and they could relate to it. So I love that about this kind of INFJ self-awareness, and this is all about extroverted feeling now, and FE, and being aware of, you know, what's going on externally in the society and what's accepted, what's not accepted, and then being able to kind of use that as a reference point for how you're going to behave and act. What I don't like about this is how it does create such a strong sense of hyper self-consciousness within your own self, and how this can become quite imprisoning sometimes, where instead of it being like I say, a useful reference point, a kind of a way to guide yourself, it turns in on itself and almost becomes quite almost like, I'm not sure how to explain it, almost like you have a drill sergeant stood behind you telling you how you should act, how you should behave, or just being so self-aware of everything all of the time, you just become overwhelmed by things. And that's why sometimes in maybe a real intense social situation like a party or a big gathering, there's times when I'm thinking, oh, I've had enough of this now. It's too much, you know. I need to go and find my own space. I need to I just don't even want to think about how I'm coming across all the time, or how I should be interacting with this person, or how I should be interacting with this person over here, because it's so energy draining. And obviously this comes from being an introvert as well, but I think it is very strongly related to this self-analysis, which is partly born out of extroverted feeling, and they kind of work in tandem. And yeah, it's just all of the time, it just seems to be there. The only time I feel I can kind of get to a place where I'm free from it completely is when I allow myself to just express in a complete stream of consciousness that will involve everything, because that's the only way. There can be no self-suppression, there can be no restriction, because as soon as that restriction and that filter starts to come down, quite quickly I'm back to kind of expressing myself or thinking or behaving in a way that is fairly, I guess, you know, it might come across perfectly fine, but internally I know it is confined to what I could be expressing. Now that could be anything. That could be funny voices, that could be funny faces, that could be certain emotions, that could be everything. And I'm just talking about physical expression. But in other terms, it could be writing some kind of deeply poetic stuff, or revealing the deepest kind of things that are going on in my mind, what I'm contemplating, what I'm feeling is some kind of existential response or crisis about. You know, it's everything, the whole spectrum. And it's kind of scary when you feel that you might release that. And it's why in the past, in some videos, I've tried to do this by just letting it all go, you know, and I've even made videos about this. But that was only in a physical expressive sense. In other ways, an artistic expression is probably the most relevant way to go about freeing yourself from this constant self-analysis. And that's why, again, having some form of expression that is unfiltered is so important for an INFJ, to give them that sense of freedom, that personal freedom, and also that sense of just being relieved from always feeling constantly aware of everything, and especially self-aware of themselves and psychoanalyzing yourself. I mean, it is what it is. It's why an INFJ is an INFJ, and it is a gift in the fact that it allows us to have a certain level of insight into things, especially into ourself. And the more insight we have into ourself, we have insight into humanity as a whole, because we obviously are reflecting outwardly what we have learned internally, which other people then can relate to, regardless of what their personality types may be. There are things that we all share, and we share more things than we don't share. But yeah, I just wanted to tell you guys about that and to talk about it. I'm not sure if this is it coming in now, if I've necessarily explained it in the way that I originally wanted to, or I've used examples that are strictly relevant to it, or I've kind of gotten over exactly how it feels, because sometimes it's a pain in the ass and I hate it, and it is just like, it just makes doing the smallest things feel so hard. There's also other personal reasons and factors that I think can come into this to make it worse, or to make it more intense for some people than it is others. I think there's definitely some things for me personally that boost it even more than maybe other INFJs may experience it. But there are times when it's almost like I kind of can self-cripple myself through self-analysis and literally experience the paralysis, you know, paralysis by analysis. I guess right there sums it up. And that's when it's just gone out of control, and also this is what will lead you into the classic NITI loop, and then all sorts of hell may break loose for you if you get really stuck into that. But it's part of the experience of being an INFJ, and again, because of your self-awareness and your self-analysis, which you will maintain, you will learn things through direct experience, which then you can use again, hopefully, to help other people. So it's there for a reason, but it takes time to learn when to use it and how best to utilize it. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there because I feel like I've probably been talking for quite a long time. And anyway, it's nice to make a video again, guys. And yeah, I'm not going to promise when I'm going to upload a new one because there's no point, but I just will when I will. And yeah, see you around in cyberspace, I guess. Have a good one.